Her lashes tremble before her eyes flutter open. Disoriented, she sits up, trying to grasp where she is. A man watching her remarks, "Finally, you're up." She studies him, mesmerized. He looks like a knight pulled straight from a fairy tale. She softly asks him what is this place. He retorts playing dumb won't get her anywhere and that even His Majesty has already given up on her. Doing something like that to His Highness fiancé, he remarks, what an utter stupidity. Her mind goes blank, and she blurts out that she's sorry, but she truly doesn't know what he's talking about. He says again, just as he said, does she really think playing dumb is going to work on him? He declares after enduring being her leading fiancé candidate for years, he has had plenty of time to learn her wicked ways. Moreover, the Crown Prince himself has personally ordered him to keep an eye on her, so she shouldn't expect any sympathy from him. He also adds the Archduke personally cast the sealing spell on this tower. So no matter how gifted at magic she may be, there will be no escape. He suggests she accepts reality and repents. Lady Violet Elford. She jerks at the sound of the name. What is happening? She echoes it back, shaking now. How could he believe she's that wretched villainess whispered about in rumors? She bolts to the mirror. One glance, and she startles. Pinching her cheek, she gasps, ouch. Not a dream. She touches her face with shaking fingers, mumbling I am not me. Her name is Sophia Alcott. Eldest daughter of Earl Alcott Sophia Alcott. She is known as the shame of the Alcott family, or so she is told anyways. She is so hideous that even though she is already 16, she still hasn't made her debut in high society. She is always showering the help with torment and insults. It's an absolute injustice that someone like that can eat at the Earl's expense. She shuts herself away in the mansion. Her nose is always stuffed in dubious foreign books about poisons from around the world. Just who knows what dreadful concoctions she's working on. Those are the sorts of rumors going about Sophia. The truth is, sadly, much more mundane. The reason she hasn't had her debuts is because her stepmother and half-sister won't let her. They said it would be a waste of money and that she doesn't have a single dress befitting the daughter of an earl anyways. She cannot say she has ever hurled torment at anyone either. That said, she can understand how people got the idea that she concocted poisons. If they don't look closely, at least. Her mother was an amazing apothecary. But she passed away from an illness when she was only 3. The funeral had only just ended when her stepmother arrived, her belly already swollen. It didn't take long for her to end up being forced to live in a storeroom at the back of the house. After that, her half-sister was born and it was as if she had forgotten. With the book her mother left to her and the herbs growing in the garden, she spends her day tirelessly making medicines. Sure, it is a bit of a lonely life, but what can she do? Even if she burned with resentment, it's not like that it will change anything about her reality. She knows one day her stepmother will inevitably marry her off to a rich man. But she hopes it is at least someone who will let her make medicine or at least let her eat every day. That's right, she really had given up on life. She was a completely hopeless shut-in. Now, as she sits there, utterly clueless, her face a mask of confusion, only one thought circles in her mind. What happened? She turns to the maid and calmly says she'd like to clean the floor, asking if she could borrow a rag. The maid looks shocked and stammers an apology instead. Puzzled, she asks why she is apologizing. Rising to her feet, she pleads instead for a worn-out blanket, but the maid collapses to her knees. Shocked, she can only ask why the girl is prostrating before her. Sophia had just fallen asleep on the floor of the storeroom like she usually did, but when she woke up, she had suddenly become the daughter of a duke who made people tremble in fear with just a glance. The man watches her in concern, asking why is she laying on the floor. He asks, is this meant to be some tasteless joke about how she would rather sleep on the floor than on the prison bed? She blurts no, that's not it. It was very comfortable and she was just trying to make herself at ease. She quickly adds not to worry, she made sure to properly clean the floor beforehand with a fresh rag, and she was able to find an old blanket to use as well. He casually puts a tray on the table and remarks the servants are scared because of how strangely she is acting. It didn't feel right exposing any more innocent servants to her downright baffling behavior, so he decided to handle her meals. He tells her to think of it as being cut off from having interactions with the servants from now on. When she doesn't respond, he looks up, only to find her already standing at the table, staring at the food as if her life depends on it. She stammers that this can't possibly be her meal, but he assures her it is indeed her portion and by her usual standards, it likely wouldn't even qualify as a meal. Her eyes brighten, and she admits he's right. She wouldn't call this a meal. It's a feast. His brows lift in surprise at her remark, but before he can say anything, she quickly adds that she's not very hungry right now and asks if it would be alright if she saved it to eat later. He says to suit herself but not to expect him to bring her a replacement. She beams and says understood. But then he yells, baffled. Why the hell is she putting her food in the closet? And she pauses. Looking embarrassed, she softly explains if she ate it all now then she would go hungry tomorrow, so she thought she would have some later tonight. Usually she would get one meal a day, so she assumed it's actually the same in the prison. Which would mean she might actually get a meal tomorrow. But then her eyes widen when he suddenly says for 3 months she will spend imprisoned here, she will be given 3 meals a day. There will also be snacks between meals. She will only be permitted a hot bath once every 3 days. And the only jewelry she's allowed is her bracelet. He lets her know if there's anything she needs, she can submit a request to him. He shall review whether or not it will be a problem. Also, there will be daily visits from a priest who will lecture her on the teachings of the scriptures until she's ready to atone. He casually adds she could do with learning some basic ethics, he believes. Watching him with her mouth agape, she asks if he's really sure this is a prison. He freezes, stunned, as she exclaims that on top of all this luxury, she even gets to be tutored in theology by a priest. This is far better than the life she had lived until now. Suddenly, his face hardens and he snaps at her to stop this charade. What kind of act is she trying to pull? He reminds her that, except for her lapdog, she tormented every servant. If she wasn't served the finest gourmet multi-course meals, she would scream that only a filthy mongrel like him could call such slop food. And as for religion, she's the type who would sneer and mock anyone foolish enough to believe in that nonsense. He declares that he knows she could never be happy in a situation like this. She freezes, the weight of his words sinking in. It's the picture-perfect portrait of a villainess. He presses her to hurry up and drop the act already. Instead, she casually returns to the table with her tray, mind reeling as she realizes the rumors about the villainess might actually be true. She outshines everyone in 2 aspects, her beautiful face and her rotten soul, the evil lady they all spoke about. Even someone like her, who has never stepped foot outside of the mansion's grounds, knows about her. An arrogant and selfish hedonist. She is as vicious as she is gorgeous. The daughter of the Duke Violet Elliford. And for some reason, she has become her, at least in form. What's more, she has been imprisoned in this place for the spire of confinement, or so she is told anyways. She recalls his words, the accusation that she had done something to His Highness's fiancé. She thinks back carefully. Didn't he say she was here because of some rude act toward the Crown Prince's fiancé? She takes the first bite, her eyes lighting up as delight spreads across her face, very tasty. Resuming her thoughts, she admits to herself that she really only knows of Violet through rumors. But even if she's actually the one at fault, she definitely seems like the type who would be angry about being locked up in a tower like this. Or so she is assuming anyways. She murmurs softly, eating delicious food like this, she is so happy. Sophia wonders if Violet switched places with her on purpose because she wanted to avoid being imprisoned. She doesn't know if that is possible, but if she's really that gifted magic then maybe there's a good chance that is the case. But even if that is true, why would she choose her? Why would she pick her, the infamously ugly hermit girl, from the rumors of all people? For a moment, she considers telling him the truth. But as the thought takes shape, she can already picture his narrowed eyes and the inevitable scoff. It doesn't seem likely he would believe her, and even if he did, it would mean giving up this unexpected life of luxury. And she has no intention of leaving this paradise. Instead of having to go back home, she would rather enjoy these 3 months to the fullest. She decides it is best to keep her secret, yet the thought gnaws at her. Can she really live with that on her conscience? Even if there's not much chance he will believe her, she has to at least tell him the truth. Meanwhile, gripping his forehead, he mutters, what is that woman up to this time? What could she be planning with that act of hers? Honestly, at this point it would almost be a relief to hear that she's a completely different person who just happens to look like her. A knock comes at his study door, and he calls for them to enter. The vice-captain of the Crown Prince's First Order steps inside. Neil greets him with a smile and asks how things are going with the girl. He replies awful, as she has come up with some new form of psychological warfare. The vice-captain teases she is just giving him advance warning that she is going to put a curse on him. He retorts he sure seems to find this funny, doesn't he? He replies, well, obviously. That said, Maybe she really is reflecting on herself. Since when that happened she really was acting a bit weird. He thinks over his words and mumbles that it's true. He remembers the scene and says he has never known her to act like that. Dousing Crown Prince Johannes with wine and then slapping his fiancée Lily and forcing her to kneel like that, it's hard to believe she really did that to those two, and at their own engagement ceremony, no less. He knows Violet was never actually one to care much about her own bad reputation but to essentially publicly execute herself in high society eyes in such a way. She would never do something as brazen and stupid as that. The strangest part is that, as far as he can tell, the two of them had barely even met before then, and no matter how many times he asked Violet about it, she completely ignored him. Well, whatever the case may be, there's no way someone like that is actually mending her ways. That goes without saying. Neil teases, is that something her fiancé should be saying? He retorts he's only a candidate for the position and as if he would ever marry her. That being said, what should he do? His Majesty the King really does dote on Violet, his niece. He is sure that the king is hoping that by being sent here, she will settle down and straighten out before she causes an incident that even he cannot shield her from the real consequences of. More importantly, the two of them have been using their positions as their respective withdrawal candidates to avoid getting wrapped up in talks with any other families. Neil knows what he's thinking about and remarks it's not as if he thinks Violet suddenly reformed herself either. Although before she was able to enter the tower, she passed out in the snow. The doctor's diagnosis was something like fainting from the stress of the situation. Neil reminds him despite everything, she's still an 18-year-old girl. Maybe her change in attitude is just a reaction to the change in her situation. But he refuses to believe it. When Violet looked up at the tower, she stood as tall and proud as always. Actually, if anything, it seemed like she was pleased. And when she woke up, it was as if she was a different person entirely. He tells Neil to not let his guard down about it. She is not the type who is afraid to do the unpredictable. Meanwhile, Sophia beams with triumph as the bracelet finally clicks open. She was right, it does open. To her surprise, a tiny note lies hidden within the compartment. Carefully unfolding it, she reads, "I am granting you a great privilege and not to dare leave a single scratch on that body." On the other hand, as Violet wakes up in the storeroom of Earl's Alcott's manor, she mutters, "How foul, did she mistakenly switch bodies with a stray mongrel?" Since she can hardly imagine a human living in a place like this. Violet notes it is already winter but she is wrapped in such a thin rag. Not to mention it's not even the right size for her. She wonders how long she has been wearing this thing. It's doubtful that she has a teacher in surroundings such as these, which means she's entirely self-taught. She would expect little else of an Arbuthnot. With a smirk, she remarks, just as much of a freak as she envisioned. She will do nicely. Speaking of which, she wonders how Sophia Alcott is adjusting. Considering how she is used to living in this squalor, she cannot imagine she will be particularly upset with the life in that wretched tower. And what's more, she's sure that man must be at his wit's end right about now. That obstinate dolt wouldn't have knowingly allowed a substitute, not in a million years. She is so looking forward to seeing the stupid look on his face when it comes time to reveal all. Well, before that she will need to bathe first and foremost, then a light meal should do. After that, she will need to see about getting a change of room, hairstyle and skin care routine, and yes, about 100 new dresses will do for a start. Frankly, she cannot imagine the sun will still be in the sky by the time she makes herself look at least halfway presentable. On her way, Violet comes across the maid Maria, who looks surprised to see her and asks her where is she going. Did Madame give her permission to go somewhere? Maria then says she was bringing her food and her gaze falls on the burnt bread. She crosses her arms and asks Maria if she is saying she means for her to eat that filth. The maid is stunned by her sudden change in behavior. Violet says that if that's the case, she will generously gift it to her and orders the maid to eat it at once. The maid is struck speechless, staring in shock, while Violet only smirks, mocking that she cannot even bring herself to eat it, despite having the audacity to expect it of her. Maria shakes in fear as Violet scoffs. The truth is, she doesn't have the time to deal with the filth at the moment, that comes later. Right now she needs to take a bath and instructs Maria to prepare it. When Maria doesn't respond, she mutters she's waiting to hear a yes. Maria quickly bows and says yes. Maria inwardly wonders who the girl standing before her truly is. Later, Isabella, her stepmother and Julia, her half-sister, barge into the room where she sits. Isabella points an accusing finger at her, demanding to know what on earth she has been doing while they were away and how she dares act so brazenly. She snaps. When did she ever grant her permission to take a bath or another meal? Julia fumes when she realizes she is wearing her dress and demands she give it back right now. Violet flatly says she didn't have a single spare dress on her own. So even though she really cannot stand this kind of fashion that even a 10-year-old would grow out of, it was the only one of her dresses that was even remotely possible, so she was left with little choice. Isabella snaps. After spending all those years cooped up with those disgusting potions of hers, has she finally lost her mind? And declares she doesn't have the right to just go about doing what she pleases in this house. Violet calmly states she is called the shame of the Alcott family, constantly hurting not just the servants but the lady and the second daughter of the house too, all whilst squandering vast swathes of the Earl's wealth, and spending inordinate amounts of time buried in dubious books about all manners of poison. Violet asks them, those are the rumors that the two have gone to great lengths to shamelessly spread, are they not? Suddenly, a smile comes over her face as she announces in that case, they should rejoice since she's about to make those rumors reality. She summons George and instructs him to show her dear mother and little sister their new living arrangements. Isabella jolts when he moves at once to obey. She demands to know why on earth he is following that girl's orders. She snaps, has he forgotten who he serves? Violet grins and says, thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not tell falsehoods. It seems even those scriptures have their uses, don't they? Violet thinks to herself while she sees to her business, but she will take the time to improve Sophia's life, so she should be grateful. The next morning, Sophie greets the commander with wide-eyed awe, declaring how happy she is to see him again. He stares at her without a flicker of warmth, flatly asking what she could possibly be happy about. But her gaze travels to the food in his hand and she mumbles no, nothing at all. But then she admits she's far happier to look at this soft and fluffy bread than his face. He cuts in flatly, pretending she's a nice girl embarrassed about being read like a book, so she pretends to be haughty to cover it up, is all an act that will get her nowhere. She smiles to herself. She was just trying to act like Lady Violet, but it didn't work out. It has been a week since she woke up in jail. Judging from the letter that she found, this really must be Lady Violet's body after all. So she tearfully called out to Sir Knight and said she thinks she might have switched bodies and told him the truth. He muttered, is that so? With that, she ended up getting pretty much the answer she expected. That being said, she couldn't be happier. She wants to enjoy each and every one of these wonderful days to the fullest. Suddenly a new voice says, color me shocked. She looks up to find Neil, the vice commander, standing next to Claude and admitting it is hard to believe he wasn't just pulling his leg. Claude asks, so he thought he was lying to him? He replies he just thought he might have been a little overdramatic, that's all. He inclines his head and greets her, introducing himself as Neil Harvey, Vice Commander of the First Order under the Crown Prince, and says it is a pleasure to make her acquaintance. She returns his greetings and thanks him for the courtesy. Then with a smile, he admits he came today to ask if she wanted to share a meal with him. She can consider it a token of their newfound friendship. She is speechless. He asks if she doesn't like the idea. She quickly blurts out no, she would love to, thinking she hasn't eaten a meal with someone in nearly 12 years. He says he will prepare everything right away, but before he can move, she rushes ahead and begins setting the table herself. When he suggests leaving it to a servant, she only smiles, saying it is no trouble. This room was prepared for her, after all, making her its owner, and as such, it is her duty to take care of her guests. She also picks a flower, saying she will use this to decorate the table. Claude mutters they can go without it. Neil, standing next to him, whispers he's getting the creeps just watching this. Cloud says he told him so. Neil then asks him what is the deal with all those plants. He replies she specifically made a request for them, and that's not all, she also asked for various iron posts and scales as well. He grumbles he hasn't the slightest clue what she's plotting. Neil retorts wasn't he boasting about knowing everything about her? Later, as they eat together, she happily chats away. It has been such a long time since she has been able to have fun eating like this. Neil offers to prepare the after-meal tea, and as he pours, she takes a sip before saying this is horsetail tea, isn't it? Neil blinks, admitting he's surprised she could tell, and reveals where he comes from. The Harvey family's territory, that being Denovian, is quite a barren place and it is hard to raise crops there, but there are always plenty of horsetail plants growing, so people always brew tea from them. She supposes that this tea has quite a nostalgic taste for him. She asks him if she's wrong. He replies no, she's quite right. Now that he's on the topic, He also reveals there's been a really bad disease going around back home that no one has been able to figure out. It causes appetite loss, loss of energy, numbness in hands and feet, and if it gets really bad, then apparently they are barely able to walk at all, and the weirdest part is that the only people who caught it are all young. He almost has to wonder if his father, the Lord, did something he shouldn't have, but then he trails off, apologizing for bringing something like that up over tea. But she quickly asks if those young people have been eating a lot of white bread along with that horsetail tea. He stiffens in surprise, so she explains, unlike the black bread people used to eat, white bread like the sort served in this tower can cause illness if eaten excessively, and it doesn't mix well with horse tails. She tells him so as long as they eat it alongside a balanced diet that they do here, then it's no problem. If they make some black bread into their diet, or better yet also have some food made from millet, then they should get better soon. From what he mentioned to Sophia, it sounds like a disease she read about from the East that comes down to a problem with diet. Though that said, she cannot really be sure since she is just comparing the symptoms he mentioned to those she has read about. But white bread is something that's only recently started to become popular with commoners. With that kind of new trend, it makes sense that more younger people are eating it than older folk. She also suggests he probably consult a doctor who knows more about food and diets about it. He gives his word to do as she said and call for a doctor and look into the diet she suggested. Now that she's on the topic, she explains horsetails have lots of uses besides being made into tea. They can use them to staunch bleeding, heal fractures, and also help with swelling. She insists if they take them dried they can treat a cough, and if they boil their juices they are great against dermatitis. They are a wonderful herb, but anything that can be used as medicine can become poison just as easily. Looking surprised, Claude admits he hadn't known she possessed knowledge of apothecary herbs. Then it comes to him, wasn't one of her tutors from an apothecary family? Neil nods, saying now it makes sense. He truly had been startled by how much she knew. It was almost as though she were an apothecary herself. She smiles awkwardly, thinking she really is one though. Later, Neil suggests it's time they take their leave, but adds with a smile that the three of them should share another meal together sometime. When Claude's sharp glare cuts his way, he hastily amends, of course with Claude's permission naturally. She replies she would love to. Neil then points out she really seemed to be into the soup. In that case, would she let him ask the chief about having it served more often? She asks, is that really all right? He replies of course, and to just let him know if there's anything she would like to eat. It's really no trouble at all. With a quiet tone, she asks if it would be possible to have a little honey. A tender smile graces her lips as she murmurs it is so sweet and tasty. Noticing Claude's surprise, she quickly backtracks. Honey must cost quite a lot, right? Honestly, the soup is enough. She is not someone who fusses over food. Once they step outside, Neil calmly says that's not her, but Claude insists it's her. It only conjures images of wreathed flowers soon to wither and die. How can such a horrid thing suit her? Neil says he remembers that was the line she said when Prince Johannes visited her when she was down with a cold, with a gift of honey in tow. That was what she said as she tossed it to the floor. Neil also admits in order to have her drop the act, he went to her room today at His Highness' direct request, but he's going to be frank. She seems like an entirely different person to him. As they begin walking, Neil reminds him, didn't she say something about having swapped bodies to him the other day? It might be high time to believe her. Claude replies when he posted the question of whether or not body-swapping magic is plausible to the palace mage, his reply was absolutely impossible. Neil sighs and asks if he heard from the Archduke at all. Claude replies he did. The king's older brother and an exceptionally gifted mage, he is a hero who once saved the country when it was on the brink. He used to be Violet's instructor when it came to magic, but apparently he cut off all contact with her after not being able to stand her behavior anymore. He is also the man who cast the sealing magic on this tower. Claude thought he might have known something. Neil quietly says they should suppose, just hypnotically, that body-swapping magic really was possible. In that case, where does he suppose the real Violet went? He replies he doesn't know, but what he does know is that nothing good can come out of it. Some years ago, at a tea party in Duke Elliford's manor, Claude greeted Lady Violet. She remarked that he was the second son of Marcus Bradley, recalling how Johannes often spoke of him. If memory served, he was training under the commander of the royal guards, who reported directly to His Majesty the King. Claude narrowed his eyes at her, while his father interjected that Lady Violet had heard of his son. Admittedly, It might have sounded shameless to say so himself, but his son was nothing short of a wellspring of talent. Later, over tea, she suddenly asked him if he would go on to serve Johannes. He quietly replied yes. She casually said to think he would actually want to serve that empty-headed prince. He would die a dog's death, he knows that, right? He didn't bother to respond, so she smirked and remarked what a boring boy he was. He knew in the first glance she was an arrogant girl. But for some reason he didn't quite understand, the way he reacted to her words made its way to His Majesty's ears. Soon enough, he ended up becoming her leading fiancé candidate, and the two of them began having to see one another quite frequently. When a girl had accidentally stepped on Violet's dress, she had only glared with icy eyes, but later Claude slammed a newspaper onto the table and demanded if she really had to go that far. She replied coolly, asking what she owed this unannounced visit, so he pointed to the Lawnnet family, said it was the family of the girl who stepped on her dress the other evening, wasn't it? Reminding her it was clearly an accident and questioning why she would go to such extremes, she only smiled, saying that accident or not, it made no difference to her, because unless every insult was repaid twice over, one day it would be her they dragged down into the dirt. Violet had already lost her mother while he met her when she was only 5 years old. She was a woman who was lauded in her time as a beauty, and her pale purple eyes under the title Princess Violet. Maybe it was because she couldn't stand being reminded of the mother she lost, since as long as he knew her, Violet hated anything and everything, even related to flowers. When Claude enters Sophia's room with a tray, she freezes in astonishment at the sight of the meal. He reminds her she is the one who said she wanted to eat it, adding curtly that it is French toast with a generous drizzle of honey, and when her eyes fill with tears as though she might carry this gratitude in her heart forever, he mutters under his breath for her to quit it. She admits she didn't think he would actually take the time to prepare it for someone like her, so she is too happy. He watches her carefully, wondering if she's really going to eat it. All he needed to do was bring her food here. There's no need for him to sit here and watch her eat it. But instead he pulls the chair and settles down, telling her to eat it slowly. He watches as she takes a bite and a smile lights up her face. A memory surfaces as Sophia stares at the honey, recalling her mother gently feeding it to her and saying it isn't just an ingredient. If she eats something sweet, it will help her brain start moving, and more importantly, it will bring a smile to her face. Her mother had told her to remember that in this world there are always little things that can make her happy, and to remember that when she is going through a sad time. Tears slip down her cheeks, and when Claude asks why she is crying, she apologizes, claiming she is just happy to eat something so sweet, but then she breaks down, admitting she remembered something about her mother from long ago and wonders why now, after 13 years, when she hadn't shed a single tear at her funeral. Claude rises quietly, saying he didn't see anything and that he will see her later at lunch, but once outside, he stops in surprise, shaken by what just unfolded. He never thought she was the kind of girl who could cry because she missed her mother. Did he ever really know her as well as he thought he did? Later, Sophia is embarrassed, unable to believe she broke down like that, but for some reason she feels strangely refreshed, as though her thoughts are moving faster than usual, the power of something sweet, perhaps. Standing before the stove, she bakes with deep concentration, testing a prototype of her latest idea. She needs to check the melting points, see how hard the mixture should be, test ingredient compatibility, and decide whether the result will be more effective as a powder or a fluid. If it works, she's certain it could help greatly in less fertile areas. She nearly jumps out of her skin when a voice calls from behind, spinning around to see Claude. In his defense, he says he did knock several times. Flustered, she asks if it's really lunchtime already. He joins her, eyeing her work, and asks what has her so focused. She admits she's experimenting with a way to make an airtight, edible receptacle after hearing what Neil said the other day. She wanted to see if there was something she could do to help. As she said back then, it is not like the food they are eating has any specific problems itself, but the issue is that they are lacking a balanced diet and certain nutrients. The key issue that leads to the problem they are facing is the lack of diversity in the foodstuff available in the Donovan domain. And the fact that the food they do have doesn't go well together and can lead to them getting sick. So when she thought about how to solve their food problem, she realized that she needed a container. Claude gestures to the chairs, remarking that this will take a while to explain, so why not sit down and talk as they eat. He adds dryly that he's sure neither of them particularly wants to see the other, but at the very least, it would be good to share a meal together once a day. Once they're seated, Sophia exclaims the meat is really tasty. Claude replies it's beef braised in red wine. He thought she would like it since she enjoys red wine. She mumbles, "Is that so?" before quickly correcting herself with a louder, "Of course." Claude then says, "Now back to what she was saying. She mentioned this edible container might help with food issues. She explains that she's making it from medicinal herbs so it will be safe to ingest. What's more, they break down under heat so after being ingested it should dissolve naturally thanks to the person's body temperature. It is made from allowing a boiled mixture of 2 medical herbs to cool and dry. But before it dries out completely, they can shape it how they like, as if it were clay. That way it will mold into the form of the pill that's the right size for someone to swallow, and into it she will pick in as many nutritious ingredients as she can. Both distribution and preservation, along with ease of indigestion, she wants to solve it all at once. She states, for example, that the Ida 10 plant grows in abundance during its season but only has a very short window in which it can be picked and spoiled quickly. On the other hand, they have plants like nganga, which have extremely strong and bitter taste. But both of them are full of essential nutritions and have good compatibility with white bread. If she boils those 2 plants down together and either keep it as a fluid or turn them into a powder and then put it into the container, it should work. Putting it inside will keep it from spoiling, and since they will be so small and light, it will be easier to transport in bulk. What's more, they can eat it without having to deal with that bitter taste. She thinks it can definitely be useful. The herbs needed to make the pill as well as the Ida 10 and nganga plants. If they do this, wouldn't it be possible that even the less well-off people in the Donovan lands will be able to afford it as well? When he thinks over her words, she softly adds her ideas might actually be a little naive. He looks up and supposes hypnotically she succeeds in making this. There are a lot of poor areas across the entire country. If she wants to create enough of these pills to reach all the people living in those places, then no matter how many wild plants she picks, it will never be enough. She is going to need farmers who dedicate their fields to growing them. What's more, she also needs to ensure that she has facilities and labor dedicated to the task if she wants to make vast amounts of these pills. She admits he is right. He adds, but if she's able to make this work, then it would be an amazing leap in technology. It is something that he would want for his own knights when they are in the field. Also, whilst he cannot claim to be an expert, he can think of all sorts of applications in various fields. She would have no shortage of investors. But above all, in this country, after the famine of years ago, food has always been something weighing on people's minds. He thinks this is the sort of idea that the palace would take a keen interest in as well. He casually admits he has always thought of her as a villainess without equal. And points out she herself has always enjoyed that reputation anyways. That's the kind of person she has always been to him. That's how he has always seen her. But what she told him just now was truly amazing to hear about. Even if she might have some sort of evil motive in telling him, that doesn't change the fact that it is truly something praiseworthy. She really does have his utmost respect for it. The unexpected smile he gives her leaves her momentarily speechless. He then shifts the conversation, saying there has been a change in her schedule for today. She asks, isn't she receiving a lecture from the priest after lunch today? He replies she would usually be, but the crown prince has come today and he's brought Lady Lily with him. He pleads with her not to slap her or make her get on her knees or prostrate herself before her or anything like that. If she does something like that again, he is sure this time it won't just end in being confined here. As they step into the room, she cannot help but think there isn't a chance she would ever meet such important members of the royal family if she was still Sophia. The prince speaks in a clipped tone, stating it has been some time. She bows with practiced courtesy. Abruptly, he adds that he understands now. As Neil and Claude had mentioned, she truly does seem like an entirely different person. He asks her if she has finally decided to learn her place after being imprisoned here. Lily looks up at him and asks, isn't he being too harsh? The crown prince tells her she's far too kind, but she insists not at all. She just thinks that maybe Lady Violet is reflecting on her actions. Besides, it's all in the past, so now she doesn't mind. Sophia realizes it is Lily, the lady Julia always called the White Lily. She is just as beautiful as the rumors say, and she even has the scent of a lily as well. The prince, undeterred, says no. Laying a hand on her is as good as an act of rebellion against him and the royal family as a whole, and just showing a little remorse can never be enough to make up for that. That being said, he sincerely doubts that she is truly reflecting on her actions so easily in the first place. She may be acting the part of the admirable lady now, but she is the type who will always dance around the point and never give a real apology. He adds he also heard she has been playing at being an apothecary as well lately, isn't that right? Without warning, the prince seizes Sophia by the arm, his eyes narrowing as he demands what she is plotting. She catches the faint scent of lilies clinging to him. Claude instantly pulls her away, reminding His Highness that it is against the law to use violence against prisoners in the tower, urging him to calm himself. The prince dismissively replies that he merely thought to stop by since they were in the vicinity, and now that he sees the reports he sent were true, they will take their leave, but Sophia calls out for them to wait, prompting him to turn sharply and ask if she intends to apologize, to which she calmly replies that his hand was strangely cold and, if she may ask, whether he has had any recent health troubles. Surprising him before she quickly adds an apology in case it was only the chill. Outside, though she cannot help noticing the bloodshot hue of his eyes and the pallor of his skin, leading her to press further, asking about his sleep, his appetite and his moods, until his composure finally snaps and he barks if she really thinks herself a true apothecary, declaring the royal apothecary watches his health closely and she should not push her way into matters where she is not welcome, his face twisting as he calls her an evil witch before storming out, leaving Claude to glance at her reddened arm and quietly ask if she is all right, to which she insists she is fine and thanks him for helping, while he admits he did not expect His Highness to act that way, acknowledging the prince has been on edge lately but not to such an extent and offering his apology. Finding her lost in thoughts, he asks what's wrong. She asks him if it would be fine if she offered His Highness a cup of milk. She will only add a decoction of several herbs. It should help him get a better night's sleep. She says she can make it in front of him so he can be sure that she didn't poison it, and she can't even provide the recipe so he can check that every ingredient is safe. He agrees and says he will deliver it to him when he's making his report tonight. At the end of the day, she really is just a shut-in who had to teach herself. Just like His Highness said, it is not really her place to try and butt in. The recipe for the milk she made should only have a small effect, but even so, if it can at least help His Highness a little bit, she will make sure to ask Claude if he's feeling better in a few days. She snaps out of her thoughts when the priest asks her if she is listening to what he is saying. She admits she didn't hear it and apologizes, but he cries out to think that Lady Violet would stoop to listening to the words of a miserable fool such as him. Life in this tower must be so hard on her, isn't it? She thinks she flipped that switch of his again. These daily doctrinal sermons were apparently organized by the Archduke himself. At first, she was surprised by how kind was to his niece that he cut ties with. But what surprised her even more was, on the first day of sermons, the priest said he thought he would never be able to see her again. He jerked away, looking at her, and said Lady Violet's supremely overwhelming majesty had forsaken them. He then said His Majesty must have taken leave of his wits. How could he think to lock away Lady Violet, the most overwhelmingly noble, the most sagacious lady, whose beautiful voice is destined to unite all the people of this world as one in a place like this? If that wasn't enough, he continued that Lady Violet says they are to be a white, then all the perching ravens of the world must be painted white. And if she insists they are to be black, then even the very clouds hanging in the sky must be dyed black. Sophia couldn't help but think his love for Lady Violet was what was really overwhelming here. At first she thought he might be someone who would believe her if she told him that she wasn't violent, but actually now she is just afraid of what would happen if she does tell him. He suddenly declares he cannot accept a man like Prince Johannes as the next king. If anything, he believes that the next ruler should be her instead. Her face falls in absolute shock, and with a quieter note, he concedes he may have gone too far just now. But then he declares at any rate, the Archduke and he both shared that conviction in their hearts. Even though the Archduke knows how she truly feels, the reason he cut contact was out of concern for her. The time for the truth to be revealed hasn't come yet, after all. She repeats the truth, looking confused. He blinks at her before dramatically falling onto the floor, saying how could a mere worm like him say something so presumptuous. He then starts apologizing dramatically. She tells him to at least stop kneeling down like that. Meanwhile, as Count Olcott returns to his manor, Julia rushes into his arms, weeping and mumbling that he is finally back. Alarmed, the Count quickly asks what has happened and where Isabella is. Between sobs, Julia insists he never received her letters, then hurriedly explains that Sophia emerged from that storeroom out of nowhere and has since been running the mansion as she pleases. She wails that Sophia even handed her an impossibly intricate pattern and is forcing her to embroider 300 sets of handkerchiefs, declaring she has gone mad and that she herself cannot endure it any longer. One of the maids steps forward and admits Lady Julia speaks the truth. Lady Sophia has also taken her room for herself. Her father thinks it seems she has finally lashed out after not being able to bear it any longer. He turns to George and instructs him to put a stop to this at once. So long as they prepare a suitable room that is better than that storage space, he's sure that will be enough to appease her. But the butler admits that is not just Lady Julia. There's also Lady Isabella as well. I shall have you rethink how you manage your servants, she said, and used that as a reason to have her ladyship forced to live like a maid. So he suggests it is best if he speaks with Lady Sophie as soon as he can. Then George steps forward with some bills. The Count asks him what are these. He replies they are the bills for all the dresses and jewelry that Lady Sophia has purchased. The Count barges into her room, only for Sophia to remark with calm disdain that his entrance is terribly rude, no courtesy of even a knock, and that a true gentleman would know better, though she supposes the word gentleman is wasted on the likes of him. Enraged, he shouts at her, demanding how she dares speak to him that way, adding that he had even considered forgiving her if only she had offered a sincere apology for her actions. But enough, he declares he will see her married off as a second wife to some suitably wealthy husband at the first opportunity. Sophia only smirks, her voice dripping with mockery as she replies that his threat is the most hilariously pathetic drivel she has heard in a very long while. He stills in shock as she continues, saying she has been waiting quite some time for his return. There are two matters she wishes to reveal, and she is certain he will find both exceptionally engrossing. She leans toward him and asks softly which one she should start with. Then, as if confirming her own thought, she declares, yes, quite right. First of all, Sophia Alcott is a descendant of the Arbuthnot's. By conceiving Julia out of wedlock, he committed a grave sin. Typically, she shouldn't be eligible as the heir either. But something like that is not uncommon at all these days. He might say that, and indeed the commandments are not the omnipresent force they used to be. It's unlikely the church would intervene, were this a typical case. She is sure that he thought he could even openly flaunt the fruits of his sins, confident in the belief that he would get away with it. But she asks him if he truly thought that Sophia was ignorant to it all. She mutters how embellic before saying frankly she doesn't see any reason to allow them to keep carrying on doing whatever they please. With a smile, she declares his truly Sophia Alcott can have the Arbuthnot family at her beck and call with a mere wave of a hand. She casually adds he can even ask her dear mother if it so pleases him, and ask her if a priest came to this mansion to offer her his blessings not more than a few days ago. Maurice Graham Holt is his name. He holds a high position at the cathedral and has very close ties to the Arbuthnot family. Violet thinks to herself, she gave him the order before the switch took place. The man may be a nuisance at times, but he also has his uses. Finding him standing there in shock, she comments on how inconsiderate of her that must be and invites him to take a seat. He quietly settles down, still processing her words. She continues, explaining that since he wishes to marry a lady of the Arbuthnot's, he must already know that the medicines created by the Arbuthnot's are meant to remain strictly under the royal family's exclusive control. All the medicines and remedies she has made so far are based entirely on the recipes and notes she inherited from her mother. She was giving the medicine she was making to a servant in the house, being told that they would be sold locally in town, under the impression that it was the suggestion of said servant herself. But to think that it was mother, his second wife's idea all along. She thinks Sophia happily took the meager recompense she earned from selling the fruits of her work and used the money to buy more herbs and mixing tools. Spending that pitiful amount of hard-earned money or nothing but means to make more medicine, and never doubting the amount she was being given. She is undoubtedly an Arbuthnot, a truly medicine-obsessed fool. She asks would he like to hazard a guess at what His Majesty would think if he heard of this. On the other hand, a young lady who owed not a single dress, merely buying 100 or 200 dresses to fill her barren wardrobe, helping the Count's second wife who never received education as a noble lady, learn about managing a household, and teaching her younger half-sister who is not good with her hands how to embroider properly. So as long as the fuss isn't raised over these very minor matters, she doesn't see any reason for things to escalate. Wouldn't he agree? He shuts his eyes and admits that she has been done wrong, but still going this far for her revenge. She cuts him off saying revenge. He truly thinks a few dresses and handkerchiefs is enough to satisfy her. That's too cheap a price to pay off a 13-year debt. Rather, she should say that revenge in this matter is not hers to dole out. Stunned, he asks what she means, wondering if she's suggesting he should handle it. She laughs mockingly, asking if he really believes he's in any position to do anything, and adds that his knack for comedy is truly remarkable. From the first days they switched places, Isabella and Julia have been sending a constant flow of letters to this man. There's not a chance he wouldn't know all the comings and goings in this mansion if he took the slightest interest. Honestly, what an utterly useless man. She adds there was actually one more thing, she's planning on making her official high society debut as a lady 2.5 months from now on. And of course, the party for the occasion will be held here at the Alcott Manor. And since she will be inviting Lady Violet Elford as well, naturally she imagines it will have to be quite the extravagant affair. And that concludes the video today. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Leave a comment if you want another part.